It was a road trip full of expectations before departure that turned sour in Perth, and with less than brilliant officiating in Adelaide, got worse.
Those games are gone. We're 2 and 3 now, and we're still in a pretty good position. So, you know, this is a key game. They're leading the league. We play well this week and everything changes again.
The Falcons' home form has been excellent, with 2 wins over Hobart and Canberra to their credit, but league leaders, the Melbourne Tigers, will be a tough nut to crack. Last year, the Tigers won both encounters by 18 and 13 points respectively. And if the Falcons want to stay in the hunt for that elusive championship, tomorrow night's match is a must.
It's key that we win at least a majority of our home games and pick up some games on the road, because I think it'll be tight, the race to the 6 this year, and anyone could make it.
And most interest will centre on the clash of the 2 outstanding shooters in the NBL, Andrew Gaze from Melbourne and the Falcons' own Michael Johnson. Both players have scored in excess of 5,500 points in their careers, and there's no better side in basketball when AG and MJ are on fire. Johnson fires up for 3. Oh, that's beautiful, Michael Johnson.
He's just another player, really, on another team. And I'm not looking at my clash with him, I'm just looking at the Falcons' clash with Melbourne. If we win, then I win.
The 2-man crew of the Seaquester were towed to safety at Foster early this morning by a local trawler appropriately named the Adventure. The tow rope broke 3 times to the wallowing vessel during an ordeal in heavy seas whipped up by a 30-knot southerly. The Seaquester's skipper was sailing from Port Macquarie, delivering the yacht to its owner in Sydney when water began to flood below decks.
We put in a few mayday calls and all sorts of other things, but no one answered. So we eventually rang the owner on the car phone that's on the boat. Luckily, we actually rang the AAA number. We got the police and then got him, and he suggested that we should look in a certain area under the motor. So we ended up ripping the whole floorboards and everything out and sort of climbing underwater, and we found that there's a crack in the hull. I don't know what's caused it. It's just that this water was really coming in. It was like having a hand over a jet in a spa.
They managed to staunch the leak using towels and blankets, but by the time the Adventure arrived, the situation was grim.
The crew on the yacht were just about ready to abandon ship when we got there, because they could see that it wouldn't be much longer and they would have had to leave.
The yacht will undergo repairs in Foster before resuming the voyage to Sydney.
For the hundreds of students at today's graduation ceremony, degrees symbolise recognition of their years of hard work. Before them, though, stood a man whose achievements in business and sport are recognised worldwide. Kevin Gosper is one of Newcastle's most prominent exports, and today he was granted an honorary doctorate of science. But getting back to Newcastle for the ceremony took some juggling of his schedule. He arrived in from London this morning and flew to Melbourne and on to Hong Kong this afternoon.
This is the most exciting thing that could possibly happen to me. It was certainly worth coming all the way from England and arriving here this morning in my hometown, Newcastle University, an honorary doctorate. A wonderful honour.
Mr Gosper has left his position as Chief Executive Officer of Shell Australia to take up the reins of Shell's Southeast Asia division and is now based in London. He's also Vice President of the International Olympic Committee and competed in the 1956 Olympic Games. But he rates this degree as one of his greatest honours.
There could be nothing more important than to be honoured by a great university, and for that university to be in your own hometown. It's the best thing that's happened to me as a Novocastrian.
Fiona was guest speaker at Newcastle Rotary's weekly meeting, reinforcing the message that proper diet and exercise are vital to a long, healthy life. Her credentials are impeccable, thrust into the limelight as a teenager, with 2 transplants back in the mid-80s after a virus irreparably damaged her own heart. But Fiona's case, while not unique, was different. Most heart disease is self-inflicted, little by little, throughout a person's lifetime.
I guess what we need to do is take steps each day to make sure we don't end up needing bypasses or coronary artery grafts. So the easiest way to do that is actually do a little bit of exercise each day and to watch our diet. So cut down on the fat intake, the salt intake, and to stop smoking. So it's pretty easy, really.
Easier said than done, though, it seems, because heart disease accounts for 46% of all deaths. Fiona Coote's vivacity should be an inspiration to all that debilitating disease can be beaten. With lifelong medication and yearly checkups, for her there is no choice.
The only thing I don't like is the actual checkups. The medication doesn't bother me at all, but I guess it's a small price to pay.
And it's not as though the opposition have dominated recent encounters with the Knights and the Falcons. It's more a case of we'll make the mistakes, you capitalise on them. The Knights struggled against Illawarra, and at Bear Park yesterday, Handling let them down dreadfully. Even the try the Knights scored was from 3 fumbles.
Just last passes go on the ground, things like that. Like we had just as many opportunities as North, but just didn't capitalise on them. Bad passing, bad ball handling is the biggest problem at the moment. It's something we've got to work on in the next couple of weeks.
For once, the almost invincible forward firepower of the Knights was reduced to a dim flame by a devastating performance by the North Sydney Six, backed up by some lucky breaks in general play.
They're very dominant. They got the roll on at the beginning of the game and they played well and put it right to our guys.
Although one of the Knights' best players with his tireless effort, McCormick tips a return to form for the men of steel.
I'd say we'll make the adjustments needed to try and get the next couple of wins up. So we've got 2 weeks to work on it and hopefully come back for a win.
A similar scenario was played out at the Ken Booth Forum at Broadmeadow on Saturday night, where the Melbourne Tigers ran the Newcastle Falcons ragged to record a 5-point win, a scoreline that flattered the locals. As with the Knights, the Falcons made plenty of mistakes, and the Tigers are a team that make you pay. But one player stood up to be counted, the captain Al Green. Green was fouled 3 times in as many minutes at the start of the game, but the 35-year-old veteran came back to score an inspired 39 points.
Clowns Click and Clack today gave the students at Burragal Primary School a lesson which may one day save their lives. Their show is about how to travel on our roads safely. This important message is delivered through singing, dancing and a fashion parade. From the 1st of July, it will be compulsory for children under the age of 16 to wear bicycle helmets. These children showed off the latest in bike accessories. The show includes a segment about wearing a seatbelt and the importance of looking before you cross the road.
Hopefully they'll go away being more responsible, more aware, thinking about what's around them when they do cross the road, not just having a bit of a look both ways, but really thinking, listening and being aware.
Well, we learnt to click that front and back when we hop in the car, and we have to tell friends if they don't click clack enough, and it was very funny and interesting.
The point of the summit is not to pretend that there's going to be new information available, but rather to bring it all together.
Up with us. Take him.
This is the centrepiece of a new system the Boffins at Shortland Electricity claim could slash the average household power bill by as much as 20% while reducing the state's carbon dioxide emissions by 1 million tonnes a year.
The principle is that we would use the power saver in conjunction with time of use charges to lop the peaks off the electricity supply system and relocate the load into the valleys that exist.
The plan is to introduce differential time of use charges as early as next year, then convince consumers to buy these time-controlled devices in order to take advantage of the cheap rates.
Our power saver permits the customer to program his appliances so that they'll automatically come on at these periods, so there'll be no need for a change of lifestyle as far as the customer is concerned. He'll be able to conveniently control his appliances and at the same time get the maximum savings from the time of use tariffs.
Although final costs haven't been worked out, the system's inventors say it will pay for itself within 5 years. They also claim it will drastically reduce greenhouse emissions by evening out electricity demand during the full 24 hours of each day.
The more efficient power stations supply the base load and are operating on a 24-hour basis. The less efficient stations are called in to provide the extra energy need to meet the peak demands. So if we can reduce the peak, we reduce the usage of less efficient power stations.
The development team was recently presented with the Brian Kimber Memorial Award by the local government Electricity Association of New South Wales.
It's as if these trees are shedding blood in the big dry. Once strong gums are dying in their thousands.
Last year we had all that rain for January till August, and this year we've now got the drought. And the trees are just finding it extremely hard to hack it.
Last year's heavy rains created fungus problems. This year, trees have little strength to fight the drought. And now, weakened further, they face more problems.
And this is an area which the borer grub has now eaten out underneath the trunk of the tree, and that's where the beetle has left the tree, now the cycle having been complete. So all that area there has been injured.
While insects make their mark, low soil water tables mean higher concentrations of salt, a mixture these casuarinas cannot swallow, killed off 60 years before their time. Less hardy plants like the introduced radiata pines are simply dying under stress. Forester Mark Burns is worried the drought and a combination of decades of poor land management could mean disaster for the environment.
The tree planting on the scale that is needed is almost beyond us at this point in time, and we have to manage what we have left very, very carefully.
$160 bowlers from Sydney, the Central Coast, Newcastle and the Coalfields rolled up for a shot at the $1,500 prize money. Teams of 4 bowled 3 rounds to reach the final playoff. The club is putting itself on the map as the home of quality tournaments. The best known is the Masters Invitational to be played later this month.
That's the prestige tournament of the Central Coast. This is the best 16 bowlers. We consider some of the best 16 bowlers in Australia. We get here 12 men, 4 ladies.
The club takes its name from an Hawaiian word meaning heavenly place by the waters, and that's just how the locals feel about it.
It's heaven to play here.
Even with the pressures of competition hotting up, there's nothing they enjoy more than sending down a few with friends.
Several thousand employees representing the rank and file of the metal industry's biggest unions attended meetings across the region. At Newcastle Sports Ground, members heard addresses by union leaders including Metal Trades Federated Union President Brian Fraser and Federated Ironworkers Vice President Vern Falconer. While the speakers had no trouble convincing members that the 2.5% wage decision handed down by the Commission was unacceptable, they found resistance and suspicion towards the ACTU federal government's Accord Mark 6.
How much more do us workers have to suffer under a Labor government? Answer the question!
Brian Fraser put the hostility down to hard times and dismissed members' fears that enterprise bargaining may not achieve all it was supposed to.
Well, the court strategy was always about that. I mean, the question about enterprise bargaining is dealing with your employer. Now, workers do that every day of the week.
Eventually, a motion endorsing the Accord was passed, but not without a few more hiccups.
All those in favour, raise your hand. Speak against it. Hey, I'd like to speak against it. Resolution. That was questions. Yes, I'm a member of the union, Amalgamated Metal Workers. Hey, brothers, I'd like to speak against this resolution without questions. This is the type of bloody lack of democracy and oppression democracy in the unions that we have today to push through essentially what is a boss's programme.
The motion was carried on a second show of hands. Unions say they'll resort to industrial action if real progress isn't reached on their demands by May 21. Tom Hilston, NBN News. Rescue crews might never have discovered 35-year-old Qasim Alamzada if he hadn't lit a signal fire after falling 20 metres from the Joels Bridge about 3 kilometres north of the Hawkesbury River. Police say his car broke down on the freeway and as he was walking to an emergency phone he decided to take a shortcut. Unfortunately, he mistook the bridge railing for a guardrail and plunged down a gully. Despite a fractured pelvis and serious internal injuries, he managed to light a fire which quickly burned out of control. Thanks to the quick response of the Gosford Bushfire Brigade, Mr Alamzada of Gununjerry near Lismore was spared further injuries. He was admitted to Gosford Hospital where he remains in a satisfactory condition.
The seats creating most interest in the Hunter are Cessnock, Port Stephens, Swansea and Newcastle. In Cessnock, the former long-standing Labor member Stan Neely wants his seat back from sitting Liberal member Bob Roberts. In Port Stephens, the redistribution of boundaries makes for an interesting issue, with sitting member Bob Martin nominating again. In Swansea, independent Ivan Welsh will defend his seat, which until the last election was a solid Labor stronghold. The seat of Newcastle was the last in the Hunter region to conduct a draw for candidates on the ballot paper. After a decade of service, Maitland member Alan Walsh is not standing, nor will Labor man Harry Moore be serving Wyong. In Lake Macquarie, retiring member Merv Hunter's son Jeff hopes to follow in his father's footsteps. Called to Australia, the Conservative Fringe Party is fielding an unusually large number of candidates in the lower house. 8 nominees are trying to secure seats on the Central Coast and in the North. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
It continued, and I am. In fact, he said that he had it in mind that the local branch wished to nominate.
National Textiles is part of the Linter Corporation, Australia's largest clothing and textile group, producing brands such as Stubbies, King G and Hilton Hosiery. The receivers to Linter, which was once owned by entrepreneur Abe Goldberg, would not reveal the price Sarah Lee paid for the 10 businesses in the group. National Textiles Managing Director Brian Smith said today he's been given no indication of any changes to operations at the 2 Hunter production plants. Mr Smith said the deal is subject to Foreign Investment Board approval, but is expected to be settled by the end of the month. Sarah Lee operates a huge frozen foods plant at Lisarow near Gosford, but is more widely known in the United States as the largest manufacturer of hosiery and a major producer of underwear.
In Carthew and Cherie Burns belie their tender years to play exceptional golf in ideal conditions on the testing course. Against a capacity fill which included defending champions Les Oliver and Sue Wilson, Carthew and Burns shot an excellent 76 in the morning's 18 holes and backed up that good start with a fine 78 in the afternoon to win by 2 shots from another young pairing of Michael Head and Lorena O'Connor. Head and O'Connor finished on 156. In rugby union, one of Australia's top coaches, Brian Boxhead O'Shea, took the city's forwards through a rigorous training session at University Oval, with the main thrust of the program being the correct way to scrummage. O'Shea is the current head coach of rugby at the Australian Institute of Sport and is a world-renowned authority on scrums. At the invitation of the University Rugby Club, O'Shea took everyone and anyone who wanted to listen through the finer points of play in the forwards, concentrating on the best way to pack the scrum and the individual aspects and positions within the scrum. To a more delicate sport, the Hamilton North Bowling Club's 10th annual Maestro Pairs got underway this morning in brilliant sunshine. 24 pairs are contesting this prestigious event and 2 matches will be played today and tomorrow, one on Wednesday, and the semi-finals and final will be played on Thursday. Cohiba's Bob King will be looking to reverse 3 runners-up trophies into the major award, and he is teamed with Rex Johnston from the Belrose Club in Sydney, who incidentally has won the event on 3 occasions. Others that should figure in the event are George Dawes and Jim Hill from the Charlestown Club, and another interesting combination is that of Crawford Linton from Belrose and Sam Lagusa of Cohiba. Lagusa has partnered Rex Johnston to 3 titles previously. The Beresfield duo of Barry Salter and Barry Whipps should also give a good account of themselves.
With the drought showing no sign of breaking, life on the land is a gamble. Many of these farmers are cashing in their chips by selling their cattle now rather than waiting for rain.
Our food supplies from where we can get it are starting to run out.
Lean feed over summer has left cattle underweight and underpriced at the sale yard.
I don't know how long it is since I've seen prices like that. You'd probably have to go back to the mid-70s in the cattle crush.
Some have decided to buy in feed, now 3 times the cost it was last year, or adjust their cattle elsewhere. Others are buying cattle and punting on the rain.
Rather than giving our calves away at the moment, we're trying to go for a dearer market, hopefully in the middle of winter.
Tom Carter of Dungog saw his undersized calves sold at a fraction of their real worth.
It's probably about a quarter of what I should be getting in 6 months.
At best, he hopes to keep a breeding herd so he'll have something to sell next year. The plight of the worst hit isn't being made any easier by a $6.25 sales levy on every beast.
All along the line, the producer's paying for it, $6.25. So it's pretty harsh, I think, just at the moment in any case.